Have you ever looked at someone you love and felt a quiet worry you couldn't quite explain? Perhaps nothing dramatic has happened. No sudden illness. No emergency. And yet, something feels different. They move a little slower. They rest a little longer. Their energy seems softer than it used to be. Many people believe that the end of life arrives suddenly in old age. One moment things are normal, and the next everything changes. But the truth is more gentle than that. The body rarely shuts down overnight. It whispers first. Small signals. Quiet shifts. Subtle changes that unfold slowly, sometimes over a year or more. And here's what most families don't realize. When you understand these signals, something powerful happens. You stop feeling surprised. You stop feeling helpless. And instead, you begin to prepare, with care, patience, and love. That's dignity. That's wisdom. Today, we're going to talk about several quiet signs that sometimes appear when an older adult may be entering the final stage of life. These signs are not meant to frighten you. They are meant to help you understand what the body is gently communicating. Because awareness changes everything. Let's begin with the first two signs. 1. A noticeable decline in physical strength. One of the earliest signals often appears in the simplest moments of the day. Standing up from a chair suddenly takes more effort. Walking across the room becomes slower. Even holding a cup or utensil may feel harder than it once did. You might notice a weaker grip. A slight forward lean when walking. Steps that are cautious instead of confident. Now, some loss of strength is a natural part of aging. But when the change happens more quickly than expected, it may signal that the body is beginning to conserve energy. You see, as we grow older, muscles gradually shrink and the heart pumps blood a little less efficiently. Oxygen reaches the cells more slowly. The body begins to prioritize survival rather than recovery. In simple terms, it shifts from building to maintaining. Let me tell you about a man named George. George was 78 and had always been proud of his independence. Every morning he walked to the corner store for coffee. But one winter, his daughter noticed something small. George began pausing halfway down the block to rest. At first, he laughed it off. "Just taking my time," he said. But gradually those pauses became longer. And eventually, George stopped making the walk altogether. His strength wasn't disappearing suddenly. It was gently fading. And the best thing his family did was simple. They stopped pushing him to keep up. Instead, they slowed down with him. Sometimes real care means encouragement. But sometimes real care means acceptance. That's quiet strength. 2. Changes in sleep and alertness. Another early shift often appears in sleep patterns. Many older adults begin sleeping far more than before, sometimes 14 or even 16 hours a day. They may doze during conversations, fall asleep while watching television, or drift off during meals. At night, the opposite can happen. Sleep becomes restless. They wake frequently. Some even speak softly in their sleep or seem caught between dreams and memories. Families often worry when they see this. But here's what most people don't realize. As circulation slows and metabolism changes, the brain naturally becomes less stimulated. The body is simply conserving energy. Sleep becomes a form of protection. I remember a woman named Margaret. Margaret had always been lively, full of stories and laughter. But in her 80s, her son began noticing something. She slept through most afternoons. At first he tried waking her. "Mom, you'll sleep all day if you keep this up." But Margaret just smiled and said something very simple. "My body knows what it needs." And she was right. Sometimes rest is not weakness. Sometimes rest is wisdom. If this resonates with you, comment number 2 below. It helps us know you're here with us. Now, let's continue. Aging changes the body. But it also changes how we relate to the world around us. Many families expect physical decline. But the emotional changes often surprise them. Because in the later chapters of life, something quiet begins to happen. The mind turns inward. Not in sadness. Not in defeat. But in reflection. Let me explain. 3. Withdrawal from social interaction. You might notice someone who once loved conversation becoming quieter. They stop attending family gatherings. They decline phone calls. They spend more time sitting peacefully by themselves. Sometimes they say things like, "I just want peace. Don't worry about me." To many families, this feels like loneliness. But the truth is often very different. You see, social interaction requires energy, mental and emotional energy. As the body slows down, the brain begins conserving that energy as well. So instead of many conversations, the person may prefer a few meaningful moments. A quiet visit. A short talk. A simple presence. Let me tell you about Harold. Harold had always been the storyteller at family dinners. Loud. Funny. Full of opinions. But in his later years, something changed. At gatherings, he mostly listened. One evening his granddaughter asked him, "Grandpa, why are you so quiet now?" Harold smiled gently. "I've already said most of what I needed to say." That wasn't sadness. That was reflection. Sometimes silence is not emptiness. Sometimes silence is peace. 4. A gradual loss of appetite. Another sign families often notice is a slow decline in appetite. Meals that once brought joy begin to lose their appeal. Favorite dishes remain half-eaten. Drinks sit untouched on the table. At first, loved ones try everything. They cook favorite foods. They encourage just a few more bites. But here's the truth. As metabolism slows and digestion weakens, the body simply needs less fuel. The organs begin focusing their energy on essential functions. The desire to eat naturally fades. A woman named Lorraine experienced this with her father. Every Sunday she cooked his favorite roast chicken. But one day he pushed the plate away after only a few bites. Lorraine felt worried. "Dad, you need to eat." He looked at her kindly and said something she never forgot. "I'm not hungry the way I used to be. But I'm grateful you made it." And that moment changed everything. Lorraine stopped focusing on the food. She started focusing on the time they spent together. That's what mattered. A warm drink. A shared memory. A quiet smile across the table. That's dignity. If this message is touching something in your heart, comment number 4 below. Now let's continue. As life moves into its final stage, the body begins making deeper adjustments. Nothing dramatic. Nothing sudden. Just quiet transitions. Let's talk about the final 2 signs. 5. Decline in mobility and movement. Over time, movement becomes harder. Steps grow shorter. Balance becomes uncertain. Standing requires support. Many seniors begin sitting for long stretches, closing their eyes often, or resting their heads against a chair. Part of this comes from muscle loss and slower circulation. But there's another reason too. Energy. Every movement costs more than it once did. Let me tell you about William. William had always been active. Even in his 70s he worked in his garden every morning. But eventually, the garden became smaller. First he stopped digging. Then he stopped planting. Eventually, he simply sat on the porch and watched the flowers grow. One afternoon his neighbor said, "You don't garden anymore." William smiled softly. "I've already grown enough things in this life." That's perspective. That's peace. Sometimes slowing down is not losing life. Sometimes it's appreciating it. 6. Changes in breathing and awareness. In the later stages of life, breathing patterns may begin to change. Breaths may become shallow. Irregular. Sometimes there are gentle pauses between them. This pattern is known as Cheyne-Stokes respiration, a natural rhythm that can occur when the body is conserving energy. You might also notice cooler hands or feet, or skin that appears pale or slightly bluish. This happens because circulation begins focusing on the body's vital organs. Awareness can change too. Some people drift between sleep and wakefulness. Others speak softly about memories from long ago. Occasionally they may say something mysterious. "I'm going home." For families, these moments can feel confusing. But many caregivers describe something remarkable during this time. A quiet calm. A sense that the person is slowly letting go of the physical world. Let me share one final story. Thomas was sitting beside his mother one evening. She had been quiet all day. Suddenly she opened her eyes and said softly, "Everything is going to be all right." Then she squeezed his hand. That moment stayed with him forever. Because sometimes the greatest comfort comes from the person we thought needed comfort the most. That's grace. If you remember anything from today, remember this. These signs are not meant to create fear. They are meant to create understanding. Significant weight loss. Deep fatigue. Withdrawal. Loss of appetite. Reduced movement. Changes in breathing. These are often the body's way of gently preparing for its final chapter. And when families understand this, something beautiful can happen. They stop fighting every change. They start focusing on presence. More conversations. More patience. More love. Because in the end, life is not measured only in years. It's measured in connection. In kindness. In the quiet moments we share with one another. If this video brought you insight or comfort, please take a moment to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who may need this understanding. Your support helps us continue creating thoughtful guidance for those navigating the later chapters of life. Thank you for spending this time with me. And remember, growing older is not the end of meaning. Sometimes, it's where the deepest meaning begins.